What's up, guys? So a little bit of a different video here. I wanted to talk about Israel Adesanya from his UFC 253 fight the other night. This is something I actually saw. I was surprised to see how much it was being talked about because when I saw the fight, it was the first thing that I noticed, but I'm actually surprised to see how many other people picked up on it. So basically what I'm talking about here is the gynecomastia on Israel Adesanya during this fight. So, like I said, UFC 253 was this past Saturday. He fought for the title, Paulo Costa for the middleweight championship. Really wasn't a very close fight. I think a lot of people were expecting it to be closer than it was. I did expect Israel to win. I did not expect him to win that easily. But still entertaining nonetheless. So I don't know how many UFC fans we have here, but I am a pretty big fan myself. So comment down below if you do watch the UFC, if you're into MMA at all. Because again, I don't hear many people talking about it in the bodybuilding realm, but it's certainly something I'm interested in. And there is some crossover, it seems like, in terms of people's interest. So anyway, when the fight starts, you see this pretty significant lump on Israel. I believe it was his right pec. So anybody who's into bodybuilding knows what gynecomastia or gyno is. It forms actually in a lot of people naturally during puberty, and for a lot of people who it does form in, it goes away on its own. For some, it doesn't. I believe the number is actually higher than you would think. If you're talking about any gyno at all, it's something like 40 to 50% of pubertal males get it, but then only like 20% end up keeping it. And the reality is, you know, if you have an eye for it, you see it everywhere, but it's just not something that a lot of people tend to notice. So, you know, I can think of people who I know for years who've never had any issues with it. They've never been self-conscious of it, but I see it. I see it in certain shirts, and it's pretty obvious to me. But the average person wouldn't consider that what we think of as like man boobs or gyno because it's such a small amount. People think of it as like being really obvious. Now, in Israel's case, it actually was obvious. The reason being because he was so lean that it really isn't going to blend in with the fat. You really just see this big gland, this glandular tissue there that's, again, really obvious and kind of drooping down. So one of the reasons we're bringing that up is because obviously, you know, if we're focused on physiques, but I think as a fighter, that really shouldn't be the concern. The reason that it's being talked about so much is because it was not there at his last fight or in any of his previous pictures. And so some people will say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, like this could be pubertal, but it's clearly not because the guy is 31 years old. He's never had it. Now, ironically, this is a guy who was constantly talking about USADA, which is the organization that tests for drug use. So he was always talking about that with Paulo Costa, who has a crazy physique, who a lot of people suspect is on steroids. And Israel was saying how, you know, this guy is on steroids and, you know, steroids is cheating. So then all of a sudden he has this gynecomastia. Now, a lot of people then associate gynecomastia with steroid use because that is a side effect of steroid use. So I wanted to make that distinction because some people will say, oh, this is just from puberty. Obviously, the guy didn't just get pubertal gyno at 31 years old. You can have some hormone fluctuations with people who diet down really severely, but he clearly doesn't. He's always very lean. He's always around that same body weight. And honestly, even if you look at like the natural bodybuilding scene, I've almost never heard of somebody dieting down to contest lean. You know, yes, you will kind of crash your testosterone a lot of the times, but I've never really heard of that resulting in gynecomastia. So I would say that this is unusual in this situation and could be an indication that he used steroids, which again is ironic, but I wouldn't say is necessarily surprising for a professional athlete who is the best in the world at what he does, right? I don't think anybody should really be surprised at this point when hormones are being used to provide an advantage in a professional athlete. But it doesn't necessarily mean he was definitely using steroids, but of course that's going to be the first suspicion with something like this. Other things that could cause it, you know, again, if he did have unusually low testosterone for some period of time, for some reason, whether it was dieting down or stress, it could cause it. I don't think that would be the main reason, but it's possible. There are certain drugs that can cause imbalances in testosterone to estrogen ratio, like finasteride. You know, if, for instance, he was going to try to protect his hair, finasteride is a drug that does that, prevents hair loss by lowering the conversion of testosterone to DHT by being a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. That has been known to cause gynecomastia. I'd be surprised if that was the reason that he just all of a sudden started taking finasteride as he's in this prep for one of the biggest fights of his life. but it's possible. But anyway, just wanted to make a video on this because it was being talked about. I actually think it's kind of interesting. Again, when we're looking at physique and physique sports, gynecomastia is often talked about, and in his case it was very obvious, so you have to wonder what was the cause of that. And because it's something that I noticed right away and I'm seeing people talk about it, I wanted to kind of chime in and give my input. My guess is there was probably some use of hormones, but there's no way to know that. I'd be interested to see if he gets it taken care of. I mean, I'm sure he didn't want to go through a surgery to get rid of it during this prep for this fight, but it'd be interesting to see if maybe in his next fight or down the road he doesn't have it anymore, because I'm sure, I mean, the guy watches social media and follows social media. I'm sure he's seen a lot of people talk about it. So it's probably something that he's going to want to correct. But anyway, let me know if you guys saw the fight, if you watch UFC, if you notice this gyno, what you think about it, and if it's something that you've had to deal with, because certainly people who want to consider using steroids, that is something that you will have to consider. I mean, it's no joke, and it can really ruin your physique and cause somebody to become very self-conscious if they're aware of it. So anyway, guys, let me know what you thought of this video. Comment down below, like the video, subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you next time.